The author says, because the pagan Arabs used to pace between As-Safa and Al-Marwa, and there was an idol atop each mountain which they used to wipe. It's like making it the base. The Muslims were averse to this sa'i, this pacing. So Allah revealed, Inna as-Safa wal-Marwata min sha'airillah. Surely, the two Meccan mountains, As-Safa and Al-Marwa, are among the signs of the religion of Allah. فَمَنْ حَجَّ الْبَيْتَ أَوْ اعْتَمَرَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَطَّوَّفَ بِهِمَا. So whoever sought the house of the Kaaba for pilgrimage, or visited for Umrah, then there is no sin on him for going between them. وَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. And whoever volunteered doing a good deed, whether tawaf or otherwise, then surely Allah is Shakir, rewarding plenty for little, and He is knowledgeable of everything big and small. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالْهُدَى مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا بَيَّنَّاهُ لِلنَّاسِ فِي الْكِتَابِ. Surely those rabbis who conceal what we have revealed in the Torah of the clear verses about Muhammad's prophethood and the verse of stoning, and what we have revealed of the guidance to Islam by Muhammad's description, after we have clarified it for the people in the book of the Torah, those أُولَٰئِكَ يَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّاعِنُونَ. Those Allah damns them, curses them, banishing them from His goodness during their lives. And the damners, whether angels, humans, or genies, also damn them by supplicating against them to be cursed. So it says here, they conceal what was revealed in the Torah about Muhammad's prophethood. That's clear. And his description was revealed in the Torah. That's known. And also the verse of stoning. I think the story about that's clear also. Which was that there were two Jewish officials who had an affair. So they got caught. And then, so they didn't want to stone them. So they said, let's do something else. Let's put coal on their faces and put them on donkeys and take them around the town to humiliate them. So then they sent a delegation to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask him about the rule. And they said, if he gives you this rule, don't take it, which is the right rule. But if he gives you something else, then take it. So they went to him and they asked him, and he gave them the rule on stoning. And there's a story there about how the Jew tried to hide it by putting his finger. Because they denied that that's the rule. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam told them it's in the Torah. So they denied it. So he told them to bring the Torah. So they brought it and they recited it. And then the one who was reciting it, he put his finger over the ayah. So he skipped it. And then the Sahabi who was there, who knew, he told him, lift your finger. Then he lifted his finger and it was there. So they hide that. They hid Muhammad's description and his prophethood, and they hid the ayah of stoning that was in the Torah.
So what made them go ask him his opinion on the punishment or the ruling for him?
Because they are kuffar. They don't even believe in the Torah really. That's what Allah told us. Allah told us that in the first place they have the Torah with the rule right there. So why would they go to somebody that they don't believe in to ask him about the rule? There must be then they don't believe in the Torah. And then when he gave him the rule that was in the Torah, they still didn't take it. Subhanallah, strange case, those Jews. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَأَصْلَحُوا وَبَيَّنُوا, except those who repented from concealing the truth and abandoning faith, And they amended their actions, yani they redeemed themselves. And they revealed what they hid. فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَتُوبُ عَلَيْهِمْ. Those are whom I accept their repentance. وَأَنَا التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. And I am at-Tawwab rahim, very forgiving and merciful to the believers. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَمَاتُوا وَهُمْ كُفَّارٌ أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. Surely, those concealers who disbelieved and died as disbelievers, those upon them is the curse of Allah after death. أولئك عليهم لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين. Upon them is the curse of Allah after death, and of the angels, and of the people entirely, and of the people entirely. So that's after they were damned while they were alive. خالدين فيها, abiding in that damnation forever. Or abiding in hell itself forever. Yani خالدين فيها. So this pronoun, ha, that's feminine. Khalidin, yani they are abiders. They are immortals. Fiha, in it. And it here is feminine. Fiha. So what is that? So the rule for a pronoun, the general rule, is that it goes back to the closest thing before it. But it doesn't have to. So the closest thing that was mentioned before this pronoun, fiha, in the previous ayah is the word la'na, the damning. أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. There, that's possibly what the pronoun goes back to. And that's the closest thing. So that's what's there. Abiding in that damnation forever, in that la'na forever. And it's possible that fiha refers to hell. Then there's the question, well, where's the reference for hell? The reference for hell is right after it. لا يخفف عنهم العذاب. The torture shall not be lightened for them, even for the blink of an eye. So it means they're in hell, forever there. وَلَا هُمْ يُنظَرُونَ. Nor shall they be spared. وَإِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. And your God is one God. La ilaha illa huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. There is no God but He. Ar-Rahmanur Rahim. The merciful to the believers and disbelievers in the earthly life. And the merciful exclusively to believers in the afterlife. إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Surely, in the creation of the marvels within heavens and earth, and the alternation of the night and the day. The alternation of the night and the day, they vary in color and they vary in length. They fluctuate in that. Yani it's not only that they come and go, but also they fluctuate in color and in length. وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ. And in the ships that run in the sea without sinking. And those ships are massive. بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ. Sailing through the sea with cargo that benefits the people. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَّاءٍ فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. And in what Allah brings down from the sky of water, by which He revives the vegetation of the earth after its death. The death of the earth is the withering of its plants. Because the earth is not really alive in a literal sense. It doesn't have a soul. And the plants are not alive also. The plants are counted as inanimate things. Or the Arabic word is jamad. Jamad means frozen. It means inanimate. So even if they can move or whatever, but they're like rocks in the meaning that they're not alive. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ. And by that lushness, he made spread throughout the earth every sort of crawling thing. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ. And in the fluctuation of the winds. وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And in the floating clouds subjugated between the sky and the earth. لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. There are indeed signs for a folk who think. Yani, this ayah is one of the ayahs for Aqidah. This ayah is the evidence for the Ash'aris and the Maturidis for their practice of kalam. The kalam, which is the theological rhetoric. I mean, more, maybe with more clarity, their practice of arguing for the right belief with rational arguments by using the creations and then giving examples from the creations. So they want to prove that Allah exists and that He has the attributes of perfection. And they want to prove that the religion is the correct religion. And they want to prove that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is indeed a prophet and that he performed miracles and that he was truthful in everything that he came with. And they want to disprove every other religion. That's what the Sunnis do. With this kalam, that's what it's called, kalam. So this ayah is a proof of that, because the Sunnis, they say that all of this world, this entire world is created. And the proof that it's created is that it's made of, talk about the rational argument. We can bring many ayahs from the Quran that is created. The rational argument that the world is created is that it's made of things that have volume. And these things that have volume have qualities. Having volume means takes up space. The things that take up space, those are at the minimum particles. Particles that can't be split because they're too small. They're so small, they're not made of two pieces. All of the bodies are made from particles. The minimum of a body is 2 particles. When 2 particles come together, some scholars said 8, but we say 2. When 2 particles come together, that's the minimum of a body. The bodies are 2 types. Dense bodies, that means you can capture them in your hand. Or subtle bodies, like the light, you can't capture it in your hand. Or the air, you can't capture it in your hand. And so all these things that have volume, whether they're dense or they're subtle, they have qualities. Qualities that are temporal. That means they come and go. They exist in time. So it would be cold and then it would be warm. Or it would be weak and then it would be strong. Or it would have one color, then has another color. Like that. It's moving and then it's still. Or like that. So this is how everything in the world is. And so then, if all of that's created, that means the world is created. Now someone's going to say, how do you know all of that's created? So we can go there. And we say, Allah doesn't resemble the creations in any way. Allah Ta'ala, He's not a body or a shape or a form. He exists without a place and without a direction. He's not inside of something or outside of something. He's not moving and He's not still. And He's not connected to something and He's not disconnected from anything. So then a Wahhabi, for example, we say, where you get all this talk from? He might say, in fact, I know where you got it from. That's kalam. The Prophet didn't talk like that. The Salaf didn't talk like that. And we say they did indeed. And the proof for that is in the Quran and it's in the Sunnah. This is one ayah here, not to go farther. This ayah is one example of that. Because why Allah mentioned all these things here in the ayah? Because this is what we look at to think about and ponder on the creations. And then formulate our arguments from there. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار. Surely in the creation of heavens and earth, and in the alternation of the night and the day. والفلك التي تجري في البحر, and the ships that run in the sea. It's enough, for example, that some scholars, they said, the fact that everything is different from everything else, that's a proof that Allah is not like his creations. Yani, that's a proof that there's a creator who exists, he has no beginning, and he's not like the creations. Or else, if that's not the case, that means that, this mouse should not be different from this cup. What made this mouse different from this cup? What made this cup different from this shelf, etc.? What made this shelf different from that light bulb? So just the fact that everything has different shape, different form, different color, different qualities, this is one way and that's another way. That means there's one eternal creator who's not like anything. And he's the one who made everything the way it is. Like that type of argument, you take it out of this ayah, for example, how Allah told us about all these different things. The ships and the water from the sky and the earth and the plants and the animals and the winds and the clouds, etc., etc. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَندَادًا. And among the people is he who takes on idols as contenders for his worship, instead of worshiping only Allah. يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, loving them with the love of God. They admit that Allah is creator of heavens and earth, but they equate the idols to him and do not love him more than they love the idols. It was said that the verse means that they love their idols as the believers love Allah. يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, loving them with the love of God. And that was the case of those old Arabs. When it says here, they admit that Allah is the creator of heavens and earth. That means that their belief is like the Christians. The Christians are pagans. They associate partners with Allah. If you were to ask them, who created all the universe? They would say, God. So, like that, that's how the Arabs were. They worship idols, many, many, many things. And if you were to ask them, who created all the universe? They'd say, God. But they make partners for him, and they don't love him more than they love their idols. And they don't love God more than they love their idols. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. And those who believed are stronger in their love for Allah than the pagans are in their love for their idols. وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا إِذْ يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابَ أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. And had those who were unjust by taking on contenders seen. Yani, had they known, when they behold the torture on Judgment Day, that the power belongs to Allah entirely. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعَذَابِ. And that Allah is severe in torture. So had they seen that, meaning had they known that, then they would not have unjustly taken contenders. So the way the ayah is worded in Arabic, it's saying, وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا. And had those who were unjust seen. إِذْ يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابِ. When they see the torture. أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. That the power is Allah's, all of it. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعَذَابِ. And that Allah is severe in torture. So then it stops there. So it's like there's ... Had they known, and then doesn't say what. So the implication is, had they known that, then they would not have unjustly taken contenders for him. And by saying that they took on contenders, andad, that's the plural of nid. The nid is the contender, and the contender is a similar. And so this means that Allah has no similar. This is evidence that Allah does not have a similar. إِذْ تَبَرَّأَ الَّذِينَ اتُّبِعُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا. Very important here. Very important evidence. On Judgment Day, when those who were followed shall, while they see the torture, renounce misguiding those who followed. وَرَأَوُا الْعَذَابَ وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ. So, while they see the torture, on Judgment Day, when those, let me say that again. إِذْ تَبَرَّأَ الَّذِينَ اتُّبِعُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا. On Judgment Day, when those who were followed renounce those who followed. وَرَأَوُا الْعَذَابَ. And they see the torture. They all see the torture. وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ. And severed from them are all their ties of kinship, love, and agreement in religion. When those who are followed shall renounce misguiding those who followed. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا. And those who followed shall say, لَوْ أَنَّ لَنَا كَرَّةً. Had only we had another chance in the earthly life. So that's very, very, very important. Yani, if a person is not careful in his religion, he's going to be one of those. He has to be mindful of where he gets his religion from, who he listens to, and what he believes, and who he lets influence him. He's not going to be able to say, well, it was his fault. He's the one who told me. Because that's what they say now while they're alive. If you correct the person in his mistake, depending on the mistake, he'll say, well, that goes back to the sheikhs and the imams. We don't know. No, they're still going to be in trouble. Like it came in the hadith. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمَ انْتِزَاعًا يَنْتَزِعُهُ مِنَ الْعِبَادِ. Indeed, Allah does not take the knowledge by stripping it from the slaves. وَلَكِنْ يَقْبِضُ الْعِلْمَ بِقَبِّ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Rather, he takes the knowledge by taking the scholars. حَتَّى لَمْ يُبْقِ عَالِمًا. Until he doesn't leave any scholars. اتَّخَذَ النَّاسُ رُؤُوسًا جُهَّالًا. Then the people will take ignorant heads for themselves. فَسُئِلُوا فَأَفْتَوْا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. And then those ignorant heads will be asked. And they give fatwa without knowledge. They give verdicts without knowledge. فَضَلُّوا وَأَضَلُّوا. And they go astray, the ones who give the answers. وَأَضَلُّوا. And they mislead others. So the follower is not excused. Has to be careful what he takes, who he takes from. Even if he has an excellent sheikh, he has to be mindful so that he doesn't take a mistake from him. The imams of guidance, they say to their people, if the sheikh makes a mistake, then correct him. And if he corrects his mistake, then so be it. And if he does not correct his mistake, then be with the religion. Don't be with the sheikh. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوا لَوْ أَنَّ لَنَا كَرَّةً فَنَتَبَرَّأَ مِنْهُمْ كَمَا تَبَرَّؤُوا مِنَّا. And those who followed shall say, had only we had another chance, so that we could renounce them as they have now renounced us. كَذَلِكَ يُرِيهِمُ اللَّهُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ حَسَرَاتٍ عَلَيْهِمْ. Like Allah shows them the torture, and like they renounce each other, thus does Allah show them their evil deeds of idolatry as regrets upon them. وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ. And it is not they who shall come out of the fire. As if to say, someone else will. The believers who enter the fire, they are the ones who will come out of the fire. And this is in other ayahs of the Quran. Subhanallah. Until they wind up in hell. On Judgment Day, they're going to be going back and forth until they wind up in hell, and they're going to be in hell bickering with each other. As Allah says in Surah Sad, Inna dhalika lahaqq. Indeed, this is true. What is it? Takhasumu ahlin nar. The bickering of the people of hell. So they're going back and forth with each other. If it wasn't for you, nobody told you to go with me. When it was that some people forbade the bahira, the sa'iba, and the like, then Allah revealed this ayah. يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا. O people, eat from what is edible in the earth, while lawful and conspicuously good, obviously good. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And do not follow the footsteps of the devil by legalizing and illegalizing from yourselves. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Surely he is for you a clear enemy. So here, what are these things? Here's a footnote. Benefit. In the dictionary called Al-Mukhtar, Mukhtar As-Sahah or As-Sihah, the Hami is the male camel that is a stud. Stud means mates with the females. And lived with its masters for a long time, its owners. In Al-Qamus, it is mated a certain number of times, or it fathers 10 deliveries. Then it is retired and allowed to drink and graze as it wishes, and it is not ridden. So it's a retired animal. Also in Al-Mukhtar, he adds, copying from Al-Farra, if that stud's grandson mates, then that stud, that said stud, his back becomes off limits. So it is not ridden, its hair is not cut, and it is not prevented from any pasture. As for the Sa'ibah, the retired she-camel, in Al-Qamus, it's mentioned, during the era of ignorance, it was the she-camel that was retired from service due to a vow or its likes. Or if it gave birth 10 times, and all 10 were females, it would be inaugurated as a Sa'ibah. Or if a man came back from a long travel, or his animal survived a great difficulty of war, he would say, she is a Sa'ibah, or she is Sa'ibah. Such a camel would be allowed to graze as it wished, and so it would not be prevented from any water or pasture, and it would not be ridden. Al-Mukhtar adds, no one would drink its milk but its offspring, or a guest, and if it died, the men and women would eat it. And Al-Misbah, he mentions, these are all dictionaries, it is the mother of the Bahira. The Sa'ibah is the mother of the Bahira. And the Bahira is the clipped-eared she-camel. In Al-Mukhtar, its ear is clipped, and that clipping is called Bahr. So the female is called Bahira for that. In Al-Qamus, it is the daughter of the Sa'ibah, and they treated it like its mother. In Al-Misbah, it is the daughter of the Sa'ibah that is left with its mother. This is the saying of whoever explained it as the she-camel. If a camel had 5 deliveries, and the 5th were a male, they would slaughter it and eat it, and if it were a female, they would clip its ear So the point of all of that is to say that this was part of their pagan religion, those old Arabs. And this is going to come back, inshallah, in Surah Al-An'am, because the An'am is the livestock, and it's going to talk more about their religion in this regard. And so they used to say, this one is haram, you can't eat it. And this is what Allah forbids the believers from doing. Allah forbids the believers from legalizing and illegalizing from themselves. And He commands them, eat whatever Allah made lawful. Yani, there's no regard given to sa'iba and hami and bahira and all of that. If it's lawful edible animal, you can slaughter it and eat it. As clarification of why one should not follow the devil and of his open hostility for the human, Allah says, إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. He only commands you with ugly sin, the devil, and the heinous deeds, and that you say against Allah what you do not know, such as forbidding what He has not forbidden, and everything that cannot be attributed to Him, yani such as saying everything or anything that cannot be attributed to Him. Yani, this is the quality of the one that you are being advised to avoid. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمُ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا. And if it were, and when it was said to the people, follow the monotheism and the lawful, yani, and what is lawful that Allah has revealed. قالوا بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا. They said, no, rather we follow what we found our fathers upon, because they are better and wiser than you. أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون. Do they follow them even if their fathers did not understand anything of the correct religion, nor were they guided to the truth? Yani, this is evidence that it's not permissible for someone to follow his parents in religion just because they are his parents. Yani, this is evidence that it's obligatory for every individual Muslim to have rational evidence for himself that his religion is correct. So we need to teach that to our children, because that's obligatory on them. It is not, when they become pubescent, it is not permissible for the wife to just rely on her husband, or the husband on the wife, or the child on the parent, etc., or the parent on the child, as far as confirming the correctness of religion. One has to have in his own mind, for his own sake, even the simplest of rational evidence that Islam is the right religion. Now, if he doesn't, then is he a Muslim? The correct answer is yes, he is still a Muslim. If a person says the Shahada and he believes in it, and he has no evidence for the correctness of his religion, you might say, how could that be? How could he even believe in the Shahada without having the slightest evidence for the correctness of his religion within himself? Because, for example, he might encounter some Muslims, and then he sees them, and he likes how they behave and how they live. He says, these people are on the truth. I want to be like them. So he goes to them and says, how do I be like you? And then they said, say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So he says it, and he doesn't believe something contrary to it. He doesn't have any shirk in his heart, and he doesn't deny Muhammad. But he doesn't think about what makes the religion right. Then he's a Muslim. And he's a sinful Muslim. He's a sinful Muslim. This one is called muqallid. Here he's a mimic or an imitator in his conviction. That's different from being a mimic in rules. That's permissible. That's following madhabs. Yani, it's permissible when you're following madhabs to be a mimic in rules. And the difference is that those rules require an amount of expertise that the people don't have. You have to be mujtahid to get to those rules. So since we don't have the qualifications to derive those rules, then Allah permitted us, to follow people who are qualified to give the verdicts, as Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, and their likes. And since the time of the Sahaba, they were doing that. Really, the Sahaba had madhabs, just was not organized like they became. When we say they had madhabs, means there were Sahaba who were mujtahids, and they used to give answers to questions, and some of them even, meaning according to their own ijtihad, and some of them even had people who learned from them, and people who would answer other people according to their answers. That's following a madhab right there. MashaAllah. The Mu'tazila said that such a mimic is not a believer. They said, Al-Muqallidu fil Iman, the mimic in faith, kafir. He's a kafir. That's what Mu'tazila said. The Muslims, Sunni Muslims don't agree with that. They said, Al-Muqallidu fil Iman, the mimic in faith, mu'minun as. He's a sinful believer. All he has to do to get out of that sin is to have even the slightest rational proof for himself that his religion is right. وَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا كَمَثَلِ الَّذِي يَنْعِقُ بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. And the example of the believer who calls those who disbelieved is like the example of one who calls out to the animal which does not hear more than a call and a cry. And he doesn't comprehend what he's hearing. He just hears a sound. صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ فَهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. They are deaf from hearing the truth, mute from saying what is correct, blind from the path of truth, so they do not understand the admonition. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِن طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. O those who have believed, eat from the appealing lawful goods of what we have provided you. Yani, even if it's delicious, eat it if it's lawful. You don't have to avoid it because it's delicious. وَاشْكُرُوا لِلَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. And thank Allah for what He made lawful for you, if Him it is that you worship. But some of the pious ones, they might avoid what is delicious, so to break themselves. That's what the pious people do. Yani, if you want to achieve the high levels of piety, you have to break your nafs. So breaking your nafs is going to be by depriving it. So it's going to be by fasting, doing more prayers at night. That means sleeping less. That's going to be, even if you do eat, it's going to be by eating things that are not as delicious, not using salt and ketchup and things like that, et cetera, et cetera. You break yourself. It was said that, subhanAllah, I'll tell you, when I was in Lebanon, I felt like their sweets was garbage. Like compared to the sweets here, like Oreo cookies and stuff, their sweets was whack. But not the Turkish stuff. The Turkish stuff was good. But I was like, these sweets are mediocre. So they said that Sheikh Abdullah, one time he tasted a cookie. They said, what that, like, I tasted that cookie. That joint is not like that. They said he tasted the cookie. He said, I didn't think that these taste like this. So I said, wow, he thinks that's good.
That's right.
MashaAllah. Yeah, and like that, there's a lot of stories of the pious ones who just, they wouldn't eat meat, for example, or the likes. Many stories, so I won't go into that for now. إنما حرم عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير. He has only forbidden you what is already dead without a sanctioned killing, except fish and locusts, and flowing blood. إنما حرم عليكم. So merely, إنما is for limitation. Merely or only, Harrama alaykum. He has forbidden on you. Al-mayta, what's already dead, without a sanctioned killing. Except fish and locusts. If they're already dead before you get your hands on them, you can still eat them. But anything else, if it's already dead without being killed properly, you can't eat it. Wadam, and flowing blood. Here, the ayah itself just says dam, blood. But it's known that what's meant here is the flowing blood because of another ayah that mentions the flowing blood in particular. The flowing blood is the blood that erupts from the gash. What's not flowing blood? The liver and the spleen. And the blood that is soaked in the meat. When you chop the meat up, there's still some blood in there. That's not flowing blood. So this is, yani, you don't have to avoid that. Like you have to avoid flowing blood. وَلَحْمَ الْخِنْزِيرِ, and swine flesh. And every other part of the pig. The ayah mentions the flesh of the pig in particular. And the judgment is for the entire pig. And the only reason the flesh was mentioned in particular is because that's mostly what the people want.
Which word was that?
Lahm. Wa lahm al-khinzir. The khinzir is the pig. Al-khinzir with a kha. Al-khinzir. Wa lahm al-khinzir, in the flesh of the pig, or yani, swine flesh. Wa ma uhilla bihi li ghayri Allah, and that over which any other name than that of Allah has been invoked. Yani, anything that was slaughtered in the name of other than Allah. In very literal sense, the ayah is saying, another name was raised over this slaughter. فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. But before that, so what if no name was said over it? It was just slaughtered properly except for the name. According to a Shafi'i, that's valid. According to the other three imams, it's not valid if that were done purposefully. The three madhabs, they said, if you intentionally leave out the basmala when you sacrifice, then the meat is haram. A Shafi'i said, even if you intentionally leave it out, it's not haram. It's still permissible to eat it. فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. But whoever is driven by necessity, not desiring nor exceeding the limit, then no sin is upon him. Yani, if you're starving to death, then what are you going to do? Then you eat whatever you have to eat. You didn't seek out that dead animal or that pig meat or something because you desire it. So rather, you need it. Then it's permissible for you to eat what saves your life. The scholars differed. Can you get full off of this? Or you can only eat what keeps you alive? So Sheikh Abdullah says you can only eat what keeps you alive. But some scholars said you can get full, it's not haram in that case. Also, who's included here is someone who had to steal food because he's dying. Then he takes that food and then he pays it back later. Inna Allah ghafurur rahim. Surely Allah is forgiving if you refrain from eating what He forbade. Merciful by granting allowances in emergency. إن الذين يكتمون ما أنزل الله من الكتاب ويشترون به ثمنا قليلا. Surely those Jews who conceal what descriptions of Muhammad Allah has revealed from the book, and they purchase with it a small price of the earthly life. أولئك ما يأكلون في بطونهم إلا النار. Those fill their bellies with nothing but what leads to the fire. ولا يكلمهم الله يوم القيامة. And Allah will not speak delightful speech to them on resurrection day, but He will speak to them. So the words of the ayah alone, if you translate it as it appears, is saying Allah will not speak to them on Judgment Day. But He will speak to them because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ma minkum min ahadin illa sayukallimuhu rabbuhu yawm al-qiyamah." There is not one of you but that his Lord shall speak to him on Resurrection Day. Laysa bainahu wa bainahu tarjuman. There shall be no interpreter between him and his Lord. So that's when Allah speaks to all the slaves on Judgment Day. So that will happen for sure. So the meaning of the ayah here, and we got the tafsir here from An-Nasafi, and that's what we learned. Allah will not speak to them a speech that pleases them, but He will speak to them. وَلَا يُزَكِّيهِمْ, nor will He purify them from the filth of their sins. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, and theirs is a painful torture. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ, they are those who buy the misguidance in the earthly life with the guidance. وَالْعَذَابَ بِالْمَغْفِرَةِ, and they buy the torture of the afterlife with the forgiveness that they would have had if they had not concealed the Prophet's description. فَمَا أَصْبَرَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ, so what was it that emboldened them to do what leads them to the fire? That's if ma here is for a question. What was it? What made them patient with the fire? What made them able to endure the fire? It means they can't endure the fire. What was it that drove them to do what's going to put them in hell? Is the meaning of the question. What emboldened them? But if this is a statement of astonishment, so according to Nasafi, this is a question for scolding. فَمَا أَصْبَرَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ, that's what we just finished explaining. According to Jalalain, this statement is intended to provoke amazement in the believers at the way in which, with complete indifference, the disbelievers commit sins that necessitate their punishment in the fire. It means something to the effect of, oh, how enduring they are with the fire, or of the fire. That is, how great is the extent of their patience, how patient they are with the fire, how enduring they are of the fire. That's if it's a statement of astonishment. In reality, they would have no patience whatsoever to endure the fire. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ نَزَّلَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ, that torture is because Allah has revealed heavenly books with the truth. We have here heavenly books. The word in Arabic is al-kitab. Kitab is singular, book. The reason why it's explained here, books, is because what's meant by kitab here is the type. So it means books. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِي الْكِتَابِ لَفِي شِقَاقٍ بَعِيدٍ. And surely, those people of the book who differ about the heavenly books, verifying some and denying others, are in remote opposition. Yani, they are in far schism. Now, that's as much as I have reviewed for you for today. Wallahu a'lam.